Welcome everybody to the Unnormalized Podcast. This is Frankie A, your host, and today we're back with another awesome show with a really cool special guest. I'm joined with SLAVIK. For most of you who probably know him from So You Think You Can Dance, season 15, and doing a lot of cool shit out there in the dance world. And I'm really excited to have him on to talk about my passion, which is dance, and a passion that we both share. So welcome everybody, SLAVIK. SLAVIK, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem, man. Tell people, I mean, we mostly know you from So You Think You Can Dance, and that's probably where a lot of people follow your journey now because of the show. So tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to talk to people because I really find that we get a lot of good insight into who you are rather than what we see like on TV and stuff like that. Who you are and where you come from, your family, stuff like that.
Well, originally I'm from Ukraine. I was born and raised there. At around age 12 is when I moved to the United States. I moved to a town called Stillwater, which is in Oklahoma. Lived there. It was around my 8th grade time. So when I moved, I barely spoke English. Kind of just had to jump into everything. Had to go to a normal school and like catch up with pretty much the culture, the language, so on and so forth. At that point in my life, I've been dancing for about a year or so. I was very like fresh, and whatever dance experience that I had was very like beginner and completely like not what I do now. So from there on, I lived in that small town. Nobody really danced there. I just had to like kind of train myself, watch videos off of YouTube, just like a lot of kids do nowadays. And then around around that same time, I kind of realized that I have big passion for dance, and that's what I want to do as my career. So my plan was since I moved to Stillwater was as soon as I graduate to move to West Coast, like Los Angeles and all that, and see what I can do from there. So then I just trained. I trained. After I graduated high school, month after, I moved to Vegas because I didn't know, LA was much more pricier and it's a little expensive. So I just moved to Vegas because my mom was living here. Moved to Vegas, made connections. For the next year, I trained a lot. Once again, I went to different events like battles, stuff like that. Did some jobs here and there. And yeah, after that, I heard about So You Think You Can Dance. I mean, I've always knew about the show, but then I've never really like watched this. I was like, well, let me audition because there are auditions coming up, and then the rest people kind of know. So that's kind of like my background.
Yes. So talk to me about now where before you came to the States, was dance something that you were getting yourself into before you moved into Ukraine, or was it something that here in the United States?
Well, I started dancing when I was in Ukraine, and the way it started was my friend did the moonwalk, and I was like, wow, what is that? And then he kind of introduced me to Michael Jackson and all that, and that's when I started really like listening to his music. And then after that, I joined the dance crew. So really like my passion with dance started in Ukraine, but it didn't like get real until I moved to United States. Even though where I moved to United States didn't have any like dance culture necessarily. Like I didn't have nobody that would like, dance with me. It was more so just me on my own. So
Yeah.
yeah. After school, all I would do is hang out with my friends outside, just roaming the city. And my mom was like, "Well, like, what do you want to do? Like, you want to have like a hobby, yada yada yada." And she was like, what do you think about dance?" I'm like, "Yeah, like that sounds pretty cool." So then she took me to this. At first, she took me to a ballet class, right? And we show up, and she just kind of shows me like they open the room and they show me what they're doing, and I was like, "Yeah, that's not what I want to do." She's like, "Okay." So then after that, she's like, "Well, what do you want to be like? Do like break dance or like hip hop?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that. That sounds very exciting." So then I show up and I like joined this like crew, and it was hip hop, and they kind of trained me like the very basics of like hip hop choreo, like kids basic choreo. So it wasn't even like popping or animation at that point. I didn't start with that at all. But then later on, as I was in the crew, I saw I was watching the show Ukraine Got Talent, and there was this dude who was doing like the robot and like all the isolations, and he was just it was the craziest thing that I've seen in person or like through TV. And next day I go back, take classes and all that, and I was talking to my friend about what I saw on TV, and next thing I know, the guy that was on TV was actually in my crew this whole time. So it was like, oh, like you saw that, you like it? I'm like, yeah, like that was super tight. I was like, what is that? And he was like, well, like that all comes from popping, and we had popping classes. So that's when I started taking popping classes, and that's where I was like, whoa, I like this and freestyle like over anything else, and that's where like my passion for dance kind of like really sparked.
That's awesome. How is I grew up in a hip hop culture here in the U.S. I live in New Jersey, so I'm very
Mm-hmm.
close to New York City.
Oh, yeah, that was my
And
city.
yeah. Oh, you were just in Jersey or New York City?
New York City.
Oh, okay. So there's something about I mean, that's where a lot of the hip hop culture sprung up was.
Many different genres of dance from the hip hop culture, and moving to United States in Oklahoma, there was nothing. So yeah, it was weird because I expected as soon as I moved to be like, oh, everyone's dancing, and then I moved and there was nobody that was dancing.
And
Yeah.
then you moved to Oklahoma.
Right. Exactly.
So the like once you got here and you started, you said you moved to Vegas,
Hmm.
which I mean, that's a great kind of entertainment capital to start,
Yeah.
doing some really big things.
Hmm.
I mean, there's tons of shows and opportunities and all that kind of stuff that happens out in Vegas.
Hmm.
Um, how does your family feel about at that point, when because like you said, um, there's one thing when you're kind of doing it like as a hobby to keep
Hmm.
yourself out of trouble and all that, but
Hmm.
when did you realize, Slavic, that this was like a more than just like a hobby,
Yeah.
a passion that you wanted to say like, I really want to do this like as a career?
Hmm. Well, my family, first of all, they supported me 100%. Um, they've always wanted me to go down the entertainment path. Like my mom really wants me to do acting, and that's something that I've always wanted to get into, and that's something that I am gonna get into very soon. Same with modeling and dancing, kind of like those three things. And when I
Hmm.
moved to Vegas, I never had in mind to like join one of the shows here. That wasn't because that would keep me grounded in Vegas, and that's not what I want to do. I want to travel with what I do. So for me, Vegas was just like a resting point uh, for me to go back and forth from LA, which is what I'm doing a lot right now. Uh, but yeah, my family really supported me on my dance journey. They've always saw me go far with it, and yeah, I'm glad that they did because that kind of like gave me the confidence to keep pushing. But I've never had planned to go to college. I never planned to do any of that because I just didn't see a future with it. To me, it's just one of those paths that everyone takes because that's what they were raised to do. So I didn't want to do the same thing.
Yeah, and you Slavic, you just hit the whole premise of what this show is about,
Yeah.
and why I like talking to people like yourself is because that isn't the path for everybody. And
Mm.
nowadays, I'm a parent, so I know how it is. You want to have your kids take a more, what we think as
Mhm.
parents,
Yeah.
like a more stable, quote unquote, path in life. But
Yeah.
I like talking to people because I think that we have lost sight of that when we have a passion and a dream about something, especially like I'm so passionate about the world of dance,
Mhm.
and it's such a big part of my life, that it's important for people to hear your message that that wasn't the path for
Mhm.
you. You know what I mean? And
No.
you knew it at a very young age that you know there was a different trajectory for yourself. And it's great that you have supportive parents, because not everybody's parents would support their kid um, wanting to get into such a, a gritty, hard to maneuver
Hmm.
business like the entertainment business.
Yeah.
So it's great to have that family support,
Hmm.
because that's going to give you the energy to push through all the adversity. And thank God, because we wouldn't be sitting here talking to you or seeing
Right.
how talented of a dude you are. You're super, super talented.
Thank you.
So thank you to your parents for instilling that in you and allowing you to have that space where you can really develop your craft. I mean,
Hmm.
um, that is like super important, especially when you're a person who's in the world like yourself, like in a performing arts, where you're just not trying to do dance, you're trying to do acting and modeling and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So it's
100%.
that exploration that you want to have support with.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, talk to me about like when you before you was so you think you can dance, like the first major thing that you kind of stepped into when it came to dance, or did you have any like big breaks or professional
Hmm.
kind of um, benchmarks or landmarks where you had before? Do you think you could dance?
No, I mean, I'm very, very fresh to the industry. Like I said, as soon as I was finished with high school, I moved to Vegas, which was 2 years ago. Like literally just now, 2 years ago. I moved 2 summers ago. So, yeah. And as soon as I moved for the first year, I didn't know anything about the industry. I wasn't even like at the point with my dance as far as training. Like I had to train a lot. I always recognized how good I need to be to get what I want. So I've always been the person to like, well, if I want to get this, then I just ultimately have to be better at my craft. But yeah, when I moved, I was very fresh. I didn't know anything at all about the business side, about how to go to an audition, how to do this and that. And that year in Vegas, I was kind of just like exploring and learning little by little. And I remember I did like one job for something, and that was kind of like my first professional thing, but it wasn't even that big. It was just a gig for a dancer, and yeah. So you think was my first big thing, and I'm a sponge. Like I learned everything as I do things. Like I adapt really quick. So me doing so you think you can dance, I just learned everything to the point where now I feel very familiar with like what to do in this industry and like how to like maneuver it. Like you said earlier. So yeah. So you think was my first big break, I guess you want to call it, and it taught me a lot.
Uh, that's impressive in itself, because from somebody who followed you from that point,
Hmm.
um, it wouldn't have appeared that that was kind of like your first groundbreaking kind of
Hmm.
breakthrough stuff that you were doing, because you carried yourself through that whole process as someone who's the viewer watching you go through that process with such a professionalism
Hmm.
that sometimes people don't always have or pick up that fast. I mean,
Yeah.
you said you've only been kind of thrusted into this within like the last 2 or so years,
Yeah.
and you're fairly new to it. And it's great to see that um, the absorption that you've had to the whole process.
Hmm.
Um, how is how is that whole thing? Did you have any formal or training in other styles besides your own at that point?
Hmm. No, I did not do everything. The only type of training that I had was that little bit of like basic hip hop choreography in Ukraine, but like I said, that was just very like things that I don't even use that much. A lot of my learning comes from like being in the field, so like doing battles, stuff like that. Just I mean, I can't even think of any real examples. It's just me kind of learning on my own, watching like people that I looked up to on YouTube. Uh, a lot of it just came from watching people and like learning it. So it wasn't like, and especially with formal styles like contemporary ballet, like jazz. I was never taught any of that at all. After I made the academy, the only thing I can say is after I made into the academy, made my audition, I had like a month before I had to go to the academy, and I was like, well, let me take some contemporary classes. So I took like maybe 4 or 5 contemporary classes, like yeah, and I another big challenge was memorizing choreography. That's another skill that I had to develop too. So it was just a lot of real training that I had was within that month of taking like few classes at Millennium in Vegas. So no, the answer to the question would be no. I don't really have formal training for what I did there.
And that's also amazing because, and maybe that's just a testament to, um, I guess, not to knock other forms of dance,
Mm-hmm.
but when you come from like doing a world of like freestyle and
Mm-hmm.
battling and all that kind of stuff, where it's very um, self-driven and self-created,
Yeah.
it kind of lends for that ability to maybe pick up things a little faster because you have to think on your like quick on your feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to really kind of just feel things and go with it.
100%.
And I think that lends to your ability to absorb quickly all of those forms. I mean, you made it to like top four, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and without any formal training. So that's impressive and a message that you're sending. Like if you open yourself up to different things and really give 110% to
Yeah.
those things, you can really develop, a skill and a craft outside of what your normal comfort zone kind of gives to you.
Yeah.
You
100%.
mentioned Slavic picking up like you mentioned about picking up like choreography, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that is learned. And I think a lot of people who are not in the world of dance don't understand how difficult that could be.
Oh, 100%.
Um, you
It's
know,
hard.
so how did you how did you prepare yourself, or how did you kind of make up for the fact that you maybe didn't have
Mm-hmm.
time? Um, was that something that you had to, or was that you really had to put a lot of training and effort into it? Because I know you don't have a lot of time. I
Yeah.
spoke to Comfort a couple of weeks ago, and then she was telling me about the time frame that you guys have from the time like you are meeting the choreographer, how
Mm-hmm.
much time you have with the choreographer, to the next time that we see you doing the routine. Um, how was that pace for you?
It was the most challenging part for me because our season was, in my opinion, from like everything that I've learned from what previous seasons have to do. We had a really tough season because not only did we had to our first live show, we had to prepare 2 duets as well as a group number, which is and it would be what was it? Yeah. So the group number was Out of My Style. It was Travis Wall's contemporary, and then I had Talia for
Amazing.
my one of my duets, and then one of the my second duet was Luther Brown hip hop. So, and the show says that it's like, oh, one style is going to be, or one duet is going to be in your style, one duet is out of your style, but really both duets were out of my style because there's never animation duet, really, they don't do that. So really it was everything out of my style, and it was just to answer your question, memorizing the things was the hardest part. I'm very good, I believe that dance is universal, so even if they say, oh, Slavik's a freestyler, so like him picking up contemporary is like a big thing, but really like if you don't close, what a lot of people in my style, what they do is they close themselves and they just don't open themselves up to believing that they think they could do that. I knew that any style, it's all dance at the end of the day, so I could do it. The hard part was memorizing it and being able to have contemporary piece memorized on top of hip hop piece memorized on top of group contemporary piece memorized. So it was really the biggest struggle was memorizing it, and what how I got around it is after each of my rehearsals. So let's say we first started with like I can't give you an exact number. It was almost a full day. It was like 6 a.m. to like 5 or like 6 p.m. It was like a full like 10 to like 12 hours. That's what we started with. And it got a lot worse as we went on. But basically, let's say I got home at first at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. What the first thing I would do is go over everything that I did. So I would just put in another extra few hours to go over everything, and that's how I made up for like lack of my skill of memorizing choreography, because that was the biggest challenge for me personally.
and and that is something that I had to learn, as a person who started doing hip hop stuff,
Yeah.
and then I moved into doing like choreography. Not only doing other people's choreography is hard, is to break down the choreography to a teachable point,
Yeah.
where people can receive it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Where it can be absorbed quickly. You
Yeah.
know, and that's amazing. I mean, you're learning. Some people can't even learn choreography for one routine, but you're learning choreography basically for three routines
And then
within
steps
like
on
less
towards
than,
4 and 5. Yeah.
yeah, for less than a week. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
then not knowing if you're going to make it to the next round, and then knowing that you have to pick it back up. Um, that definitely is a testament to your dance ability.
Mhm.
And I'm always interested to know, like, I guess maybe you can't answer this question, but who were on the show some of your favorite choreographers, like where you were in the room with them and you're like, oh shit, I can't
Mhm.
even believe
Yeah.
that I'm sitting here.
That's funny because every time throughout the whole starting from academy onto live shows, anytime the producer or whoever would announce like, "Oh, you're gonna be working with this choreographer," and everyone in the room is like, "Oh my God, I get to work with Mandy Moore, I get to work with Travis Wall, Luther Brown." They were saying these names and they were astonished, and I was just like, I have no clue who any of these people are. So I didn't really have, and which was kind of good because then I didn't have I wasn't scared because a lot of them might have gotten intimidated. I didn't get intimidated because I didn't, like I said, I'm fresh to the industry. The only thing that was in my head at that point is like people in the freestyle world and like my people that I look up to. So I obviously I didn't get to work with any of them. Uh, I mean, except for like later on, like Yaya or like Comfort. Those are like the people that I knew more of. And but yeah, as far as choreographers, I didn't have that intimidation factor. I wasn't ever like, wow, like I can't believe I get to work with this person. Yeah, I don't think. But then getting to know the choreographers after and like working with them, I'm like, wow, I really appreciate how like professional and how really great they are, and I see why they have so much hype around them when their names get called. Because working with every single choreographer that I did on the show was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm such a fan of all the choreographers, but especially like a choreographer like Travis Wall,
Mhm.
he can probably give you a as a choreographer a good space to work in because he knows the process. He knows that
Mhm.
whole kind of like fishbowl of a world that you were kind of
Yeah.
thrusted into, to be a contestant, to be a from a choreographer, to now working with somebody on the show. Um, it's probably a really good experience where they can mold you kind of and bring out all of the good stuff that you kind of bring to the table.
Yeah.
And I it it's like it's really like commendable, because you kind of did this whole difficult process
Mhm.
and didn't even skip a beat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so out of your own, what do you feel was like you were like the most shocked that was in the most enjoyable, genre outside of anime and popping and hip
Mhm.
hop? How like what did you feel like you latched on to and had that emotional connection with?
Well, I think every contemporary piece, almost every contemporary piece that I did was very enjoyable because of how much emotion you have to bring to the table to execute the choreography. So I think contemporary was my favorite style to do outside of what I did.
Yeah, and again, it's lends back to coming from hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of it is emotional. A lot of it is showing that pure like enjoyment for dance,
Yeah.
and definitely, I think that's where, as a viewer, we were shocked, pleasantly surprised
Yeah.
how how, how quickly you adapted to contemporary. There was just something about your contemporary pieces that were, you know, um, that made us forget who, like, and that's what I love about the show is watching you guys come in through the audition process in
Mm-hmm.
one genre, and by the end of the experience for the viewer, we totally forget, Slavic, where you even like come in from. You know what I
Right.
mean?
What your style is. Yeah.
Yeah, we totally get lost into it because you have then transformed, like you said, dance is dance. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? So we totally forget. Like I totally was like, this boy is, I'm thinking in my head like he's a hip hop popper doing contemporary,
Yeah.
like or jazz. I was looking at it like, look at Slavic the dancer. You know what I
Right.
mean? By the end
Exactly,
of
man.
your journey,
Yeah.
and I, as a dancer or someone who can appreciate that, I really um, think that you bring a message like that. If you just open yourself up, like you said, a lot of genres, not even just hip hop, but a lot of genres they get stuck in that.
Yeah.
So like ballet, they're like, I'm not going to ever do hip hop. Hip hop
Mm-hmm.
people are probably like, I'm never going to do ballet.
Exactly.
But it's a testament to your dance ability and your craft when you can kind of open yourself up to all that.
Yeah.
And like, rightfully so, you did that 100%, and that was just a testament to how long you stayed on the show.
Yeah.
Because we see some people struggle going from genre to genre, but you just basically seamlessly went through a different genre of styles and made us believe that, you were, I mean, I guess it's from the emotions and stuff that you were putting into it,
Mm-hmm.
what, has to be exhausting. Not
Yeah.
only are you doing long hours and days, but you get into something like a Travis Wall piece where it's really deep.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're having to pull out
Yeah.
all that emotional stuff. So how did you, how did you manage that?
Um, how did I manage to like pull out the emotion?
Yeah, like how do you go from being like exhausted from doing a
Oh,
12-hour day, you
yeah.
know, to
I mean, really,
going into,
yeah. Really, a lot of it, most of it comes from just drive of me wanting to, win the show. I just knew that I had to work hard and harder than everyone else in the room. Uh, but on top of that, like the choreographers, for example, the last contemporary piece that I did with Travis Wall, he gave me a really relatable story, so I was able to channel like all the emotions. That was probably my favorite piece. Is the one I did with Melanie Moore. The
mhm.
story of the choreo was very relatable, so I was just able to challenge like all of my emotion and energy into that. Um, but as far as like getting through the brutal, like at first it was 10 hours, and then top four rehearsals were the hardest ones by far because at that point like my body was like just it went through it went hell and back with everything that I've done on the show, and it got to the point where on the first day when I show up, I had African jazz to do with Hanalei and then other pieces, right? But African jazz was the most challenging one because I had to lift Hanalei a lot, and she's very light, and it wouldn't have been a problem any other week, but because it was the last week, I had really like real issues with my lower back to the point where it was hard for me to even stretch. It took me a full hour of stretching my lower back to start my Travis Wall piece because that was the first one I did that morning. So I show up and I was like, look, I'm going to be honest. I don't know how much I'll be able to get done today because I can literally not even bend down without having like excruciating pain in my lower back. So it took me forever to stretch. And then next thing, I had like a 15-minute or 5-minute, however long it was, break before I had to go into my next routine, which was African jazz. And then I show up and we start doing things. And the choreographer is just, he's nervous at this point because he sees that I can't even do bait. I can't even lift her up because my lower back won't even let me lift myself up, you know? So I had to wear a back brace for that first rehearsal. But then it was crazy. Second rehearsal, I show up the next day. Um, I felt great. I got some sleep that day. I don't know what it was. I felt really good, but my lower back was still in pain. And I was like, the only thing that would help me right now is for my lower back to not hurt. And then an hour later, or like 20 minutes later, I'm not feeling any pain in my lower back at all. Like somehow I just wanted it so bad to where my pain went away. But yeah, it was hard. Uh, 10-hour days turned into like 15-hour days with less time for me to work over my memorization at home, and that gave me less time to sleep. So by that point, at first I was getting like maybe 6 hours of sleep in the beginning of So You Think, and then it got to the point where I got 4, and that was the only thing I could work with. And then live shows hit, and that's like 4 hours of sleep automatically because we had to get up at 4 a.m. and me going to sleep. But it was probably even less than 4 hours of sleep. But yeah, it was really behind all of it. The backbone to that was just the drive because I wanted to win so bad. So I just had to do what I had to do.
Yeah, the pain. I guess you're giving us an example of how pain is mind over matter. If you really
Yeah.
want it, if you really want to move past the pain,
Mm-hmm.
especially with dancers, people don't really understand the physical exhaustion that you put on your body as a dancer, especially
Mm-hmm.
a professional dancer where it's not just something that is done leisurely or every now and then. You're doing it as a profession.
Yeah.
So your body is your paintbrush. Your body is your tools to do the work,
Yeah.
15-hour days, 3 routines, 4 routines, um, and something like African jazz where it's really demanding
Yeah.
of the body.
100%.
Never mind the the mental stuff that you have to put in to learn the choreography, the
Mm-hmm.
physical strain that goes on top of something like that, is something that I can't even imagine myself doing.
Yeah.
So putting that much time and effort and exhaustion on your body, sometimes people they just need that day or that couple of hours to recuperate, and you'll be amazed at what the body will be able to give back. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Just because you simply are acknowledging the fact that, hey, I need to like take it down a notch a little bit because something like that could throw your whole chances out of being a contestant on the show.
Yeah.
And it's being in tune with your body and knowing
Yeah.
what the limits are of your body. um,
100%.
that must be like what do you how do you was it were the choreographers, because sometimes choreographers are not understanding to something to that effect.
Yeah.
How did the choreographers receive that, um in the midst of like finals in a competition like So You Think You Can Dance? Was it something that they worked with you on, or
Mm-hmm.
were they giving you the drive and the motivation, like let's keep pushing?
No, they definitely take our health into consideration first. So if they saw that I was really pushing it, they would tell me to like relax. Uh, but like that window of, oh, okay, he needs to rest was very small. So besides, if you know, when I needed a back brace, that's obviously one of those moments where, okay, you need to relax for like a second before we hop in. So they would give me like a little like 5-minute break or so. But for the most part, it was a lot of like pushing, like give it to me full out. They were really, really pushing us, and it was depending on the choreographer on how much, and depending on how we were. Like, let's say like me working with Luther Brown was a lot easier than me working with like Ray Leeper because I'm not familiar to jazz. So obviously Ray Leeper had to push me a lot harder to do jazz versus Luther Brown. Like by week 4, it was a lot more. I understood the choreo a lot more, so it was a lot easier for me to like work with it. So it all depended on the style for each dancer, and you know how I felt, how comfortable I felt with doing it.
Yeah, that that makes sense that you were able to lend yourself a little bit more to the ease of the style that you were in, but
Hmm.
having to push through some of those more difficult um, forms or genres. It was probably the one of the hardest things that you had to do. Um, but I guess when you're up that high in the competition,
Hmm.
um, seeing that end goal in sight gives
It's
you
so
that
close.
drive and determination.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Slavic before when we were talking
Hmm.
about dance being the like entryway to this whole entertainment industry.
Yeah.
So you mentioned things like getting into acting and modeling, and
Hmm.
how how do you go from being Slavic the dancer to the actor to the model? Do you
Hmm.
find that and the reason why I'm asking this is because Comfort brought it up in our interview. So I'm interested to see how you would respond.
Hmm.
But how do you go from all those different forms of the business?
Well, really, it's just like again being open to doing everything. Like that's those three things is something that I want to do. So I'm just just because I'm a dancer doesn't mean I can't do. Like I'm still a human being who can do whatever a human being wants to do. So for me, acting is just something that I've always seen actors do big movies, and it's just been fascinating for me to do myself at one point. So what do I do? Just with like dance, I get like an acting coach if I need one. I make friends who are actors. I network. I find out what's right, what's wrong. Like if it took me only a year to get where I am with dance, just through like me putting myself out there, I just do the same thing with acting. I do the same thing with modeling, and I will get results. It's really all about putting yourself out there and learning and executing on upon like your mistakes and just building up from there.
That that's I love that. I love that
Hmm.
because um, my normal 9 to 5 job is I am a social worker
Hmm.
and a life coach. So I do a lot of trying to instill that same message to people that you have the ability to do anything that you want. I mean, we hear that all the time, and sometimes it goes in one ear out the other because we hear
Yeah.
people say it a lot. Like if you want to do it, you can and have the drive that
Yeah.
you can do it. And I think sometimes people say, oh, they're just saying that or whatever, but
Hmm.
there is actually proof in when you put yourself out there. And not every time, Slavic, you're going to rise to the occasion. I think you hit it perfectly when you said, you learn from the mistakes or you
Yeah.
learn from things that you are maybe like a little deficient in and try to seek out ways that you can skills. And that is something that as a young guy like yourself, if you can keep that, it'll carry you so far in your life. I mean, I'm a little older than you,
Hmm.
but that is
Hmm.
something that I learned a little later in life. So you
Yeah.
have the advantage of being a young guy, and from what I get from just meeting you today is that the drive and determination that you
Hmm.
have is going to take you places,
Yeah. Thank
especially
you.
in an industry where it can chew you up and spit you out. That
Yeah.
drive in it all is gonna take you to some really big places. So
Hmm.
what what do you have on the horizon um, that's coming up that we can kind of follow some of your projects
Yeah.
that you're getting into?
Well, first things first, like the most accessible thing to me is social media. So I've been really working since the show, building my, kind of brand outside of So You Think You Can Dance, just really like my brand just of dancing anywhere, anytime, like under any circumstances. That's what I've been doing. I've been traveling a lot more with teaching. That's another thing I've been doing a lot is traveling and teaching. So any travels that I get my opportunity, like I was in New York, shoot a video, collab with other artists, kind of putting myself more on the map. Outside of that, I've been doing a lot of training to improving my style to kind of take me where I want the people that I would watch on YouTube kind of like take me to the same level where my idols are. So that way I would get more opportunities come my way because I'm just going to be ready for them. Um, one of those opportunities is World of Dance. That's where I'm training a lot right now because I went to
I
audition for
love
World.
it.
Yeah, I went to audition for World of Dance. I want to do showcases for World of Dance, like the front row, like the stage one, not the TV. But I do want to audition for the NBC's World of Dance eventually as a soloist. I just like right now, I don't think I'm at a level where I could like go and win. And for me, like I like to go all the way. Like that's what another thing that So You Think You Can Dance taught me is that I came underprepared for So You Think You Can Dance, and that took me all the way to the finale. So if I really like mastered my body more, like if I auditioned now for So You Think You Can Dance, it would have been a different result, I believe. So that's why I'm trying to get ready as much as possible for World of Dance, so that way when I do show up, I know that I could have a real chance on winning. Because World of Dance is really like the highest caliber of dancers, in my opinion. That's where they are. So yeah, that's kind of like my next big thing. Outside of that, just working my social media, working with different agencies on modeling, working with my management on getting more jobs, stuff like that. Just kind of like networking and getting more stuff done. I'm getting my citizenship. I'm actually taking my citizenship test tomorrow because I'm not a citizen of United States, so that way it's hard for me to travel. So I can't really go outside of the country to like work. So I'm getting that, and I'll be able to travel and work and teach and kind of like spread my knowledge, the knowledge that I have on top of building more knowledge. So yeah, a lot of things are on the way, and I've been working on them a lot recently. So just keeping the momentum going, really.
That that's it. And you do a lot of stuff with another amazing dancer, Fiction. You guys
Hmm.
are like the chemistry that you guys have is I love it. I love it. So how is it like? You didn't know Fiction prior to So You Think You Can Dance, right?
Oh, I no no no. So here's how it goes. I knew of him ever since I was in Ukraine because around the time, like close to when I moved to United States, is around the time where I saw his audition tape, uh, which is crazy to show the amount of time like that has passed. But
Yeah.
yeah, after I moved to Vegas, I guess he saw my one of my videos while I was in Oklahoma. I remember I posted a video to a song that he did, a World of Dance, and I put hashtag fiction. So I guess that's how he saw it. So he liked it and he followed me. And then he's always been a person that I looked up to. And after I moved to Vegas, he found out that I moved, so he hit me up on Instagram. He was like, "Hey, you in Vegas?" I'm like, "Yeah." It was like, "You want to train?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" So that's where we kind of like became friends to the point where he went from like my mentor to like my best friend. It's kind of like a dope transition. But yeah, he inspired me with like the way he thinks and the way he approaches things and execute things, like his mindset and his drive kind of inspired me a lot onto what I do right now. Not like outside of dance and all that, just in life in general. Like him as a person motivated me to become better.
That's awesome. It's always good to have somebody like that in your corner that believes in
Yeah,
what you're doing and that you can like absorb things from.
100%.
Yeah, it's you the relate you can tell the relationship that you guys have when we see your videos and stuff and you guys are together. It's always seems like it's a blast. You guys are always doing your thing out there, and it's a great thing to see. I love watching your videos of you
Yeah,
two
thank you.
together. You guys are great separately, but I think as a team, there's something there. There's like a chemistry and a magic that's there
Yeah,
beyond just dance. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
you
of
guys
course.
should really think about like doing something together, like that is outside of dance, whether it be acting or something to that effect, because there's a natural chemistry that's there, and I think it just makes people really want to know more and see more about you guys.
Hmm.
So I would love to see you guys doing some other things out there. I think you guys are
Probably is
hysterical.
gonna happen. Just knowing how the industry works and like us working well together, and we're really like good contrast and like good put together. So yeah, probably something we might get like a job on a movie together, like Step Up 6 or 7, whatever one. I can 100% see that happening.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so, what when you're in, it's great to see that the there's such a community surrounded by dance
Hmm.
that you can be doing your thing and somebody like fiction just kind of reach out to you and say, hey, you know what I mean, like, let's get
Yeah.
together and let's do this, and it builds that community. So how is like being on a show like So You Think You Can Dance, do you take those relationships, obviously we know you took one relationship very seriously,
Yeah.
but the and how was that? How is that like meeting somebody and then having like you guys are like the Romeo and Juliet of So You Think You Can Dance,
Yeah.
you know? So how is that? How is like how do you sustain those relationships because you're in such an intense kind of like family bonding, very specific unique situation that you guys are in. Is
Hmm.
it something that you kind of stay with that, that family, and how is that like after the show ends?
Me and Genesee, well, we first of all, when I didn't know really when I was in academy, that's when you kind of meet everyone. All the crowd that I was around didn't really make the top 10. Everyone that made top 10, they're contemporary jazz, tap, like ballroom. I was the only hip hop guy, right? So I didn't. I was around hip hop guys when I was in, so I never even knew of Genesee until we partnered up, and then we really just we had that natural connection right from the get-go. We was really like on the same page. We became really good friends to the point where like we would try to wrap the whatever little rehearsal afterwards at like my apartment. We just try to wrap it up fast so that way we can just like chill and like be friends. And yeah, around the tour is when we started dating, and we've been in a relationship going for almost a year now. So it's gonna be a year in October. But yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, and we kind of saw that coming from a mile away. It was
Yeah.
just something that guys that as a viewer we were like, there's something going on there. There's a beyond the chemistry of just two people dancing. So it's really great to see that out of that whole experience that you took away so many different things,
Hmm.
uh, that maybe somebody was coming on the show just to get that number one spot and to win, but you opened yourself up to like all the possibilities that you
100%.
can get from the experience,
Yeah.
and that's like I'm so totally digging, like I had respect for you as a dancer, but now just as a general person, I have a tremendous respect for you, buddy,
Thank you for
because
that.
you are, seems like you're, from what I'm talking to you, you're a hard worker. You came here from a totally different country, not
Hmm.
even speaking the language, being put into an area of the country where it wasn't exposing you to what your passion needed for to develop, and you sought that out, and all the opportunities that kind of came from that, your drive and your determination. I really think, Slavic, that's a message that kind of will be taken from this interview beyond your skills and your talent and your craft as a
Hmm.
dancer. And you got to keep, as a young guy, let me tell you, you got to keep with that because it's going to
Yeah.
take you so far in life. And we want to see that. We want to see more of you. We want to see. Um, I have such a dance is like I can't explain it. I don't dance anymore.
Hmm.
I don't do choreography anymore. But it's not something that I can turn off. I can hear a song and I'm instantly thinking about, if I was doing choreography, how would
Yeah.
this
What
go
would you
down? And
do?
it's all
Yeah.
playing out in my head. Yeah, and it's just something that will never die. And I have a lot of respect for people in the dance community, just because I know how hard it is, being a dancer and trying to get out there and just have your work seen by everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you took the route that we get to see that.
Hmm.
So, any other projects that you want to talk about that you want us to know about outside of the world of dance?
Nothing really. I mean, like I said, a lot of the way I work, like I'm very fresh to the industry, so there I can get technical with like I want to do this, this, and that, or I'm gonna do this, this, and that. But it's really just like it doesn't matter. Just anything that comes my way, I'm just working on myself to be ready for all of it. But yeah, the people are definitely gonna see more of me outside of So You Think You Can Dance. So yeah,
And you haven't come back as an all star yet, have you?
nope, not yet.
Any intentions of coming? Are we going to see you coming up on
I
as
mean,
all star?
I would love to come back as an all star, but it all depends on if they want to bring me back. So it's not up to me. It's up to me to say yes or no, but it's up to them to hit me up about it. So we'll see. Hopefully, it is
Well,
like one of my goals would be to come back as an all star, but we'll see if that happens.
I definitely think you deserve an all star spot.
Thank
So
you.
that's just my opinion. I think the dancers would be able to learn a lot from, you know, how you transitioned through all that.
Hmm.
More so than than having that connection with an all star. They want. I think you can be able to give them a little bit what they may need to give them the drive and determination to keep going through the contest and beyond. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? When the show wraps and ends. So, Slavic, I really appreciate you joining me today. I really dig how your mind works, and I love what you're doing with your career and what you've done with your craft to make yourself the best fucking dancer that you possibly could be. I think you're a badass. I want you in fiction to do whatever you can do because I love it. I love it. I love it. And I really am honored that you took the time today. I know you have a busy schedule,
Hmm.
to sit down and just talk to me about dance. I could talk hours upon hours with dancers,
Yeah.
just because I understand it and I have such a passion for it. And I love to see a fellow dancer um, doing their thing because I went where I went one way as a dancer and took the normal conventional route. You went the other way, and that just
Yeah.
shows you that you have to take that drive and that determination and that passion, and you got to fucking do something with it because if not, then you'll kick yourself in the ass your whole entire life, saying, "What could I have done?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I love that I get to sit down and talk to a badass dancer
Thank-
who really has such a wealth of talent out there, and that's no bullshit. I really reach out to people that I have a lot of respect for, and I dig what
mhm.
they're doing. So it was just naturally for me to say I need to reach out to him and see if he'll be on and just talk dance. And thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad to like share my experiences with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a place here. So when you have things that are coming up, and you have the time and you want to sit down and tell everybody what's kind of coming up as your career so we can follow your journey in this
100%.
whole thing
Yeah.
of life, I would love to have you back on. And why don't you tell them, Slavic, how people can reach out to you or follow you, all
Mhm.
your social media stuff, so we can kind of keep tabs on what's going on with you.
Really, it's just my Instagram is where I post a lot. That's kind of like my main platform, and it's at it's Slavic SLAVIK. So no nothing in between. It's just it's Slavic as one thing. And same with Twitter, and I just made a TikTok, and I think it's Slavic except instead of S after it's a Z. So, but that's just yeah, and I post on there all the time. I try to engage with my followers as much as I can and like post daily. So that's my main hub.
Awesome. So everybody, I want you guys to go on to Twitter, go on to TikTok, go on to Instagram, follow Slavik. This is not the end. So you think you can dance is not the end of his journey. It's just the beginning, and
Yes.
we're going to see a lot of good things coming out of this young man. So if you want to jump on the beginning cusp of him ripping up this entertainment world. Hopefully, we'll see him on the World of Dance. I know we're
100%.
going to see him on the World of Dance, and I
Yeah.
bet you in a little bit we're going to be talking to the winner of World of Dance. So
That would be
everybody,
I think that's how it's gonna go. What season is it now? Season 3. So I think like maybe season 5, season 4. I think probably more like season 5. Yeah, because I don't think there was a
so
solo winner yet. So I might be the solo winner. We'll see.
well, listen, you put it into the universe for everything else. Put this into the universe, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you as the winner. If not season 4, season 5. I'm making my predictions right now that we'll be talking to the first soloist, and it is going to be Slavik of World of Dance. And I'll be happy to have you back so you can talk about that whole experience and
100%.
everything that's happened in between. So, everybody, thanks for joining the Unnormalized podcast with me and Slavik, and stay unnormalized.